Yesterday I ate a clock. It really was time consuming. Hi, I'm Andy, purveyor of terrible jokes, and this is my channel, An Adventure in Taste and Time. Welcome. In case you don't know, this year in particular I'm concentrating mainly on my allotment, which I took over at the beginning of this year. I'm getting to grips with it, making mistakes you can laugh at, things like that. I'm also adding other things. For example, I will later on look at the seeds and seedlings which I grow here at home, and in the kitchen more of a preview of a chutney that I've made. The last batch I made last year was very successful with some guys who tried it in a restaurant in London over poppadoms, an Indian style chutney made with home produce. Later on I'm going to be putting the full recipe into a separate video. So let's start. Cue titles, then you'll find me over in plot 35 in North Bournemouth Allotment Society's grounds. This time I want to start with somewhere I normally walk straight past in the orchard area. Beginning of the year I bought 3 grapevines, and they were bare root, and for ages I didn't even think they were going to come to life, but now they've suddenly decided to come to life. This was quite big, and so hopefully I don't know whether next year we'll get any grapes or have to wait a bit longer, but we'll see. Bit of a bonus, last Sunday somebody had to sign up with a big pile of wood chip saying that you could have some free wood chip. So we've got this, which would be great for mulching, lining paths and things. I'll have to pop over and thank them when I see them in next. Raspberries, as you see, still cropping, but coming to an end. You know, there are diminishing returns, that's fine. In the end, with the rhubarb, I just have left it for this year. I suppose I could crop it now and try some, but I think it'll be quite tough. Maybe soon we have to think about cutting down the asparagus, so it'll be ready for next year. And also the asparagus sown this year has grown a little bit more, but I'll just leave that as it is. This is where we had lettuce, and I put too many of these bolted, even though it's in the shade. What I've done, I've cleared them and put down what's called green compost. Right, this is where I grew lettuces in the shade of the polytunnel, and they've got the seed, of course. I won't be using anything for this rest of this for this year, so I'm going to grow a mixture of seeds. Already some split, which is autumn winter mix. Is basically what's called a green compost or green manure, and it'll grow up. It's a frost soak killer. I cut it down, and it fixes more nutrients into the soil and effectively by growing weeds. So we're going to clear these bits and then scatter the seeds. Likewise, I'm going to clear the rest of these down and spread some green manure seed here. again, artichokes, I am leaving them to grow bigger for next year, and I've never seen them before. Aren't they beautiful flowers? And I notice bumblebees must love them. Summer crookneck. I'm getting a few extras. There's been a bit of a pause. I'm getting a few. Again, they seem to be slowing down. Meanwhile, in the Brassica cage, I bought some yesterday, reduced in the garden centre, or the day before, January King red cabbage and purple sprouting broccoli. And while I was in the same Stewart's, one's broken, oh well, but they were selling off slightly cheaper than usual in the same garden centre these trays of Brassicas, and because they look pretty good, I'm going to take a punt on them because we might get something over the winter. We've got purple sprouting broccoli, which I haven't planted from seed, and because I'm a bit worried about how they're coming along, this is January King cabbage, which presume means we've got a nice winter cabbage. So what we'll do, we'll weed out the Brassica cage, which needs it anyway. I also want to just identify what's growing where, because some of the things I grew earlier I know are cauliflowers and Brussels sprouts. I really need to take a deeper dive to see how they're doing. And also perhaps put the last of my bloodfish and bone, or just bone meal, down, just to give the ground a little bit of a boost. Google Lens tells me these are woodlouse eggs. And then further down, these are all coming together. That cabbage looks a bit sorry for itself. I'm actually going to pick it and take it home, because I think if I strip down, we'll get some goodness out of it for dinner tomorrow. But some of these lovely hearts, but I've got to start eating these. But I've grown 3 cauliflowers. 2 are not too much, but come and look at down here. I don't know if hopefully it'll grow more, but there's a proper cauliflower down there. And here we've planted seed potatoes, Maris Piper, hopefully for roasties on Christmas Day in these tubs. Let's go and have a look at that. Right, it's the first week of September, and I'm going to start thinking about Christmas. I think I've mentioned before, I want to have as much. Initially, I was hoping to have all of my Christmas dinner vegetables, apart from, say, onions, from the plot. Well, let's see how much we get. But you can't have a roast dinner without roasties. So I got, and it was quite surprisingly difficult to get hold of this time of year. Seed potatoes, Maris Piper, which, good for roasting. Which specifically marketed as being for Christmas. So it is, as you expect, rather than old potatoes, and I am going to grow them in these big tubs. There we go. Take a look at that. Yes, they're all nicely chitted. They're all ready to go. The reason being, when we start getting to frosts before Christmas, these tubs will go into the greenhouse or under some sort of cover. so we can move them. And yeah, it will be brilliant to have roasties we made ourselves Christmas Day. The tubs have got holes in the bottom. I've drilled out, so there is drainage. You've got to have drainage. If you're waterlogged, it's bad news. So let's make a start on that. I would actually put at the bottom, broken pots are also good to help the drainage, but we're going to have to keep our fingers crossed that the current drainage will be adequate. Hurry. So the say 10 centimetres, I think, needs to be buried to 10 centimetres. So I think up to the top from there, it's about 10. I'm thinking the larger ones, pop that in there, pop that in there, I think 2, how many that means? I think it's quite rich compost. I'm gonna have to try and get a couple of smaller ones in just to get them measured out. I may be overcrowding them, but we shall see. This is already quite damp, and I'll give everything a nice water to get it going. But at the moment, I won't water it until I get it into a sunny position. And finally, give them a water. These lettuces I planted out are looking fine. My only worry is because I probably left the weeds grow too tall. They've seeded, so there's going to be probably a lot of hands-on weeding with these. My 2 courgettes, people tell you only need 2 courgettes. I like them, the particular variety, and I can't remember what it is. We'll put it in down here. Haven't given me many courgettes, so although I like them, I think I've used up the seeds. I'm probably going for a more, and the reason I've got it, probably because it's not that productive, but also it's quite thin skinned, which is nice for frying and things, but it just didn't give me enough that I was hoping to do more with. The Itchy Coochie is forming globes. I don't know, hopefully not too late. That chard is going to be replaced by more, and these small beetroots, oh look, they're forming globes here. With the older beetroot, I'm actually going to take some today to roast tomorrow. Here's a funny thing. In the tomato plant, I think the honeydew's coming to an end, and another one, Stupice, is only beginning to ripen, which is nice because it means we get more tomatoes. But in a way, and And also we're feeding the tomatoes and courgettes and cucumbers once a week now. But it's 2-piece, so I thought, I can't remember why I went for it. I say it's ripening later than anything else, I don't mind. But the funny thing is the big thing that the seed catalogue made of it is it ripens really, really early in the tomato season, right at the start. Well, somehow I've managed to make it ripen right at the end. This little random number that just grew is giving me tomatoes. I need to pick them. I think one of them's split. The Prima Bellas are being really productive. I'll definitely be using this one. It's outside. It's supposed to be blight free. You can certainly not see any, but I've had just so many of these. This is a great outdoor type of tomato. In the greenhouse, apart from the basil, cucumbers, funny old mixed bag actually. Some cucumbers, like some plants are dying off completely, like here, while others are still viable, forming cucumbers, which will grow. In fact, this one I'll take today because it's often almost dead plant. And well, some are still flowering, but I've got cucumbers at home. These will grow, so I think we're going to get, well, the next time we talk in a couple of weeks, we'll still be having cucumbers. I don't know, but it's fun to find out. It's the end of August 2025, and we've had a wonderful bank holiday, a bit earlier than normal, but really hot weather. And then it's like there's a glitch in the matrix. Tuesday morning, go to work, the weather had gone downhill. Normally, you'd have a rainy bank holiday and a glorious Tuesday back to work. But just time to think of what's going on in the winter. I mean, it's a shame with this sunny weather, but days are drawing in, and we've got to start thinking this is the last gasp, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong, to get things sown. To all of which, during my last update, I mentioned these winter density. I'm going to talk about these again in a minute. They haven't germinated, and I don't know why, but it occurs to me, being in August, some warm weather, and being a winter, overwintering lettuce, that maybe it's been too hot for it to germinate. So we'll keep that going, and I am going to sow some more. First of all, I'm going to put some for pricking out. So lots of little seeds, small area, when they germinate, prick them out. And these are, put those there, organic claytonia or miner's lettuce or winter purslane. So very much a winter lettuce. It won't grow fast, but it should give us some leaves through the winter. It's a classic one. Look at the bargain on this, 25p, American landcress. I understand that is quite good at cold winter for overwintering. I'm a little late with this, and I've had not a lot of success. Let's try again. St. Michael of Verona purple cabbage, and really this tiny bit late, but this is really very much for harvesting during the hungry gap in next year. Yeah, see, this is winter density. I just reminded myself because I have another winter lettuce here called Winter Marble. By the way, I just still absolutely adore the packaging of real seeds. It's in paper as well. So I'm going to actually put all of that is going into just here. And then we've got and I'll demonstrate how it holds its, these big holes do hold the compost. I've got a Hugh Richards tray here, and I'm going to do a bit of multi-sowing. First of all, I don't think there's much left, but in here we've got these mixed radish seeds. which I don't think is as fancy as their Morton Secret mix. Maybe it's just what they have spare, I don't know. But I don't want to do real seeds down. I love their stuff. And finally found this packet. Let's try and get last bunch of spring onions in. So my plan is put all of this in. When I get to the end of using of the radishes, I will continue with clumps of spring onions with, you know, what equivalent hopefully of a small supermarket bunch per cell. Right, let's get on. So I've done a bit more prep. What we're going to do first is fill this. Right, I've made up my labels. I'm going to use this first. And for growing medium, I've got some cabbages which have got eaten, and I'm just going to do that to get the medium out. And the reason, this is unfortunate, I mentioned it in passing updates, is that we're picking out the seeds while they're quite young. In fact, no, when they're really tiny seedlings, comparatively. I'm just taking out the roots, these rejects. I'm getting this to fill up quite nicely. So they just need to germinate. That's all we want. So we do not need to feed them. I just want to actually put a good volume in, not to, as I say, feed them or give them any nutrients and take some of the larger lumps out. It's a good way of reusing this stuff. But more because the volume will give me better water retention. Now I'm going to just push it down, firm it down. Do more, yeah. The other thing I mentioned recently was I was doing too many lumps or batches, not too many batches, not enough batches, but of lettuces, which were successful, but I was doing too many in a batch. So they were bolting before I really used half the lettuce. So this is Michael of Verona. It doesn't matter with these as we go into the autumn. Because these will not bolt. They will not be producing. Also, yeah, when you put the seeds back, do it over where you're sowing. Then if any drops out, they go where you want it to be. And so that is the St. Michael of Verona. And I've already made some tabs. I'll tell you what, let's put it there, pointing at you. It doesn't matter which way around it is. That's the landcress. Okay, so that's there. Winter purslane. Notice I am just putting these straight onto the soil, and I'll show you what I'll cover them with in a bit. It's going to come out a huge amount. Oh, no, it's not too bad. So quite tiny seeds. I don't know. Should I try a second sowing of these later in the month? Or yeah, so they're less likely to bolt. So they theoretically should last longer. Of course, everything's slower. So actually, you want a lot this time because I imagine because in order to, so that was claytonia. Bop. And finally, winter marble. much bigger seed. So this little area, you can literally end up with hundreds of seedlings. What I plan to do is, once I've finished, I'm going to tamp these down with this again. There we go. Is, you know, when they come up, put them into the smaller mental block moment Charles Dowding plug trays. That'll probably be those plug trays last outing. So let's put that there. And now I'm going to cover them with vermiculite, which I think I mentioned before is a bit like rock which has been blown in volcanoes, so it's sort of blown in the way that corn makes sweet corn. And the idea of this is it emulates, because it's these tiny, no, not tiny, but like bits of rock that anything can push through, including seedlings. In a way, you almost don't completely black out the seedlings. You get maybe a very slight bit of dappled sunlight, which sort of emulates what they might be like, you know, when sown wildly. Anyway, going to water that in a minute and hope for the best. Slightly different approach to the spring onions, and I always seem to have trouble remembering it, those little round things. Radish. Love radish. It seems to go woody too quickly on me. But this year. So this is my own potting mix. And this time we do want them to have some goodness in. They are going to need a bit of help, especially we don't want, you know, if we're maybe waiting for a space in a bed or something for them to go in. So this is a mixture of fine sieved compost, perlite, which is the other kind of blown rock, and that this time it's used to add free drainage to it, because you've got this thing where you want your seedlings to be in a damp soil, but also well drained. I mentioned those are Charles Dowding. This is the Hugh Richards plug tray. There you are. I'm the collector of celebrity plug trays. Right. And look, I'm going to push these down. Make it a bit quicker. I'm going to show you some. I think this time I'm just going to top them with soil rather than vermiculite. I'm going to put a little bit more in each. About right. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now, where those big plug trays, look. I know if I knocked them, they would start, but as you can see, I'm more in danger of rolling off the top than the bottom. Those big holes, doesn't matter that they've got these big holes, but you know, it does mean it's well drained and very easy to push the plugs out. So, first of all, there's only so much of this mystery radish left. That is the end of it. Bought it last year, I think. I think I will get some more. It's nice. It's some bigger than others. There are a couple of seeds there, but I'll get those out in a minute. So I don't know, 4 or 5 per plug. Let's see how we get on. With Charles Dowding again, who is, as well as No Dig, is the big advocate for these, and he says these plants, as he calls it, these multi-sow because the plants like to be with their mates. which is nice. And I've just realised I'm doing this a bit in a silly manner. I'm going this way across the two, rather should be going, because there is, oh, we're doing it now. And I think that is just going to be over 2/3. There's very few left. Probably too many over here, and I think maybe even. So yes, if I wasn't an idiot, I'd be going this way because there's this border down the middle, but no, I had to go this way, and I'm just redistributing them. So what we'll do, we'll put mystery radish mix here, so we know what's going on there, and then just for the rest, and since we're going over winter, I think I will do another batch of these in a week or so, just so that we get slightly different germination points. It's funny, you think that sowing seeds will be something that takes a lot of your time, but actually, as you see, it's just a few minutes, quite relaxing. Weeding, that takes your time, and just doing things. Harvesting's a pleasure, of course. And I probably will stand up for the next bit. So that was the spring matrix. So this spring onion is going to really see light of day. And what else are we going to overwinter? Broad beans is an obvious one. So yes, there we go. So we know that way radish, that way spring onion. Nice little bit of earth over it. You know, maybe I'll get another sowing of some other radish as well, because radish is the speediest of vegetables to grow. Push them down nicely. One example, every year I buy a diary in the sales intending to write down the dates of every time I sow seeds to try and get a track it. And each year I start forgetting about it because I'm so busy. I've really got to get to grips with that. And that's why I'm mentioning about there's so many lessons learned this year with my first year in an allotment. And I'll just, but when you think things through, those mistakes can be turned into solutions. And here's one good example. First of all, I grew my climbing peas. I didn't protect them, and the birds started eating them, so I had to re-sow. Then I put some wire mesh which around it, which kept the birds off. Then when they grew a bit higher, above that wire mesh, the birds started again, so I put netting over. Lost a lot of time, and the disaster really was by the time they'd finally formed peas, it was so late in the year that virtually as they ripened, they immediately became overripe and hard. It means that I'll have plenty of peas for next year. And to be honest, they're Lord Leicester peas, which nearly died out. Apparently, it was down at one point to one handful of seeds. I'm going to be collecting the dried seeds later. And if anybody really wants to try some, I'm not selling it, but you know, if you let me know, I can you know get some to you maybe. while stocks last. I would say they're a climbing pea. I actually had them more successfully in my garden last year, and they are nice and quite prolific, as long as you get the timing right. Something went wrong this year, but then looking forward, and then we had a second disaster. The sweet corn grew and grew, and as you saw earlier, I got a few off. By gum, they were delicious. They weren't like shop bought ones at all, or even as my parents, when I was a small child, it used to be my favourite thing. But the strains are different. I remember my mother would put them in a pressure cooker for quite a while to get them cooked. And now you just boil them for a very short time. Also, for some reason, Mum would pick them and keep them for a few days. I had it that day or the next. Delicious. But the problem is, as soon as it became mature, something got it. I don't know, badger or something. So these two things can come together for 2026 if we're all spared. I put up the peas, get them off nice and early, get that wire netting round it, and as I grow up, make sure I get some wire mesh round it, wire netting over the top as we need it, and start nice and early my sweet corn again. By the time the peas have finished, successfully this time I hope, the sweet corns haven't reached maturity, and they were left completely alone until they became sweet. Then there's time to take that netting off, then take the wire mesh round it and make that a fence round the sweet corn. There should be time to use the same mesh like fence for both as a succession one to the other, and I'm hoping that will work and it will keep off whatever it is. I mean, there might be some things that aren't going to be put off by a mesh, but we're going to have to try, aren't we? So that is just one of the many things. And go back to the diary, I've really got to write these things down as they come to me. I've got to start a notebook of lessons learned and how to overcome them. And one day I might actually know what I'm doing. We'll see. Using beans from the allotment, I also made a spicy chutney for poppadoms and curries. I'll be telling you how I did this in a dedicated video. Such is the timeline of making this video. Some of the seeds I sowed earlier have already started to germinate. Now here, the seedling bench, things are looking quite positive. I think I was a bit despondent a couple of issues back, or last issue, but things have come on very nicely. My last chance, I don't know if it's too late or not, for green beans, dwarf French beans, they're grown. So they're ready to go to the allotment, and fingers crossed we might just get a few beans before it gets too cold for them. Radish and chard all ready to go out. And okay, not that many, but these spring onions were overcome by weeds for some reason. But it seems that the weeds have largely died off and they're ready to go out as well. Well, the very recent ones we just talked about, let's see where we are. Unfortunately, after the after that last video about sowing, the winter density got blown off the table. So I've re-sown, and I was thinking just before here, oh, they're not showing, but I don't know if you can see it, but very, very carefully, there are a few tiny ones coming. Also, recent sowing is the spring matrix, the mystery radish. That's germinating, and that can succeed the other radish I'm about to put out. And this one, the claytonia, is very successful. The winter marvel, I thought, again, another lettuce. Now, this is all lettuces, by the way. I was talking about the winter density, the winter marvel lettuces, but there are just a few coming up difficult to see, but they're just doing that. Also, landcress, I thought was nothing, but it's actually slightly camouflage against the background. But yes, seedlings are coming up. Claytonia is fantastic. And St. Michael of Verona, which is a spring cabbage, that's come up nicely. So before too long, we'll prick those out. St. Michael of Verona is an interesting one because the the brassica cage is full, but I'm thinking I'm going to start eating more of those brassicas. So we put these in the plug trays, and when we can, get them out there as we're taking stuff away to eat. So that's it for this week. If you liked it, please use the button specially for that purpose. And if you haven't already, please consider joining us via the subscription button for further adventures. The chutney recipe I'm going to leave for a few weeks, so when it's mature we can actually give it a taste. Well, I can. It's difficult, I always feel, when the person who's made something tastes something, because you can't be objective. But we'll see, maybe there's some ways around it. Next time I expect we'll see some more things planted out, slowing down on the summer crops, and also just trying to think how we're going to keep things going through the winter into next year. Take care, have fun, see you next time.